So you're seeing an EMDR therapist? Awesome. Good first step. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about what EMDR should look like. My name is Sierra Lusby. I am a trauma therapist and I have helped tons of people heal from hours and years of trauma wounds. So, EMDR is a really important modality that is used to treat trauma. It's also used to treat a lot of other things like eating disorders, anxiety, OCD, relationship issues, the gamut, really. Um, so what we want to talk about today is kind of what what not what not what not to look for, but like red flags in EMDR work. Okay, so if you don't know about EMDR, please check out my other video about EMDR and listen to that first so you have an idea of what we're talking about. So, one of my first red flags that I want to share with you is when a therapist does EMDR, does reprocessing in your first appointment. Okay, so usually there's an intake, and that's your first session with the therapist. It's where they ask you a lot of questions, you answer, they write things down, yada yada. You might have time to make some goals during that session, or that might come in the second session. Typically, in my office, first question's all about getting to know each other, building rapport, understanding your story. Second session usually is when we get into goal making. Already, we haven't even begun to do the EMDR, the bilateral stimulation. It's all part of the process, learning about you, creating goals. It's all part of the process. It's all very important in EMDR. But typically, we're not doing reprocessing in the first session. Why not? Because EMDR requires a connection, it requires trust, it requires rapport. If I'm going to hold your hand and take you through the deepest, muckiest part of your life, the hardest part of your life that you've been through, and reprocess it, I'm going to want us to have a little bit of a relationship first. I'm going to want you to feel safe. I'm going to want you to trust me and trust your brain and learn to trust your brain. So before we get into the reprocessing, there's a lot of education that I like to do. There's a lot of getting to know you and establishing a safe space. It's also about learning how to regulate so that, let's say, you are doing something hard and you do start to feel panic. How are we going to handle that? We need to develop a lot of skills before we can do EMDR. Another important thing that I see a lot of therapists skip over or brush through is my favorite phase of EMDR, which is resourcing. Okay, so the way I describe EMDR is that there's resourcing first and then there's reprocessing. In resourcing, we're taking the good stuff and we're making it bigger so that if we have a positive idea about ourselves or a positive memory, it's bigger and it's easier for us to access in our brains. This helps with healing. Then we get into the reprocessing stuff, right? Which is where we're taking the big scary stuff and we're making it smaller and we're building new adaptive beliefs about ourselves. Which one sounds more fun? Yeah, I agree. The first one, right? Taking the good stuff and making it bigger. One of my personal favorite resources that I'll share with you is a memory that I have of my grandmother. Kind of on the top of my head going, shh. You know how nurturing grandmas might do, going, shh, and making me feel safe. And so after having made that resource bigger in my brain, it's so much easier for me to access. And if I'm getting stressed, guess what? My whole body melts. I feel safe all of a sudden because I'm tapping into this resource in my brain, right? So, a few reasons I spend a lot of time in resourcing. One is that it gets you more familiar and comfortable with the process before we dive into the hard stuff, right? I would rather you feel confused and stumble over, figuring out which way, if you're tapping or using your eyes or using your ears, figuring out which type of bilateral stimulation works best for you. It gives us some safe space to do that in. It also, right, it makes you feel like, okay, I've got this. I know what to expect, right? When you do come in for that long reprocessing session, that's going to be hard. Another thing that I see a lot of therapists do is that they don't talk about aftercare with EMDR. Aftercare is really important. So after an EMDR appointment, even if you've been doing resourcing and making the good stuff bigger, even if you've been doing that, your brain has done a tremendous amount of work. You have taken your brain on a marathon. You've taken your brain to the gym. Bravo. That's amazing, right? So that means we need to tend to our brain afterwards, just like we have to stretch after a big workout, right? Or how we have to rehydrate after a marathon. Same thing with EMDR. So, what I always ask my clients to do after an EMDR session is hydrate more than you normally would. Get a lot of protein in, eat full meals. If you feel tired, let yourself nap if you have the capacity. If you feel like you want to go to bed early that night, go to bed early that night, right? If you are having a hard time sleeping and you're using more of your like relaxation skills before bed, you're using yoga nidra or doing progressive muscle relaxation, don't worry, I'll teach you all about those. Then that's okay. You have to treat yourself after an EMDR session like you just went through something, because you did. And it was hard, and you deserve to be treated well afterwards. Or else, guess what? We're recreating the trauma. And we don't do that. We do not want to do that. One more thing, EMDR is awesome because you don't have homework. In some therapy, you're like, oh, I got to journal about this, and I got to like try going to the grocery store 4 times, and I have to write about how I'm feeling, and I have to practice those mindfulness skills 4 times a day. It can get a lot, right? When you're in the thick of reprocessing with EMDR, you kind of have anti-homework, because in an EMDR session, it's like during the session, we've painted a room in your brain. And after that session, we need to let that paint dry. We don't want to go in there mucking it up. We don't want to streak our paint or anything. So, what I want you to do after an EMDR session is let that paint dry. Don't go thinking about it. Don't go journaling about it. Don't go calling the person who you're frustrated with about it. It's not the time to do that work. There will be plenty of time to journal and whatnot once you have new adaptive ways of understanding yourself. So great, right? You get to do really hard work in a session, but then you don't have to do that work outside of your session. In fact, it's not recommended to do outside of your session. It's recommended to do in the safe space with the therapist. Now, if you're somebody whose brain is still really trying to reprocess, because that's what brains will do, they'll keep trying to reprocess. If your brain is continuing to try to reprocess and it's bringing up some of that yucky stuff, some of that yucky image, content, body sensation, then your therapist will have taught you the skill of containment. If you've gotten to reprocessing and your therapist hasn't taught you the skill of containment yet, stop. Stop and learn containment first. Containment's really helpful so that you don't have to re-traumatize yourself or reenact that trauma in your mind and body in between appointments. Containment gives you a safe place to put your trauma. Please talk to your therapist about it. If you want a video on containment, please drop a comment. I'd be happy to make one. So I hope this helps today. I hope you learned a little bit more about EMDR, and I truly hope you were able to check off every one of these boxes and that you're with a therapist doing amazing work. If that's the case, tell your therapist you appreciate them because they are taking really good care of you. Hope this helps. Bye.